energy in this room, just like there is across the country. Something is happening in America.
Made a case for Kamala Harris while making the case against Donald Trump. Although there was one moment where she also...
What happens when Desi Lydic, the undisputed queen of satire, finally decides she's done playing nice with political royalty? Let's just say Hillary Clinton might want to hit archive on her emails, and maybe her sense of humor too. Desi didn't just throw shade. She unleashed a solar eclipse that blotted out the entire political skyline. This isn't your typical, buttoned-up political debate. It's Desi versus Hillary, and the claws are diamond-tipped. So grab your popcorn, silence your phone, and get ready, because you won't believe what she said, or who actually stood up and agreed with her.
Well, looks like the lock them up E has become the lock them up her. Look at that smile. That's the smile of a woman going, I get it now.
Before we dive any deeper, go ahead and smash that like button and hit subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Picture this, a fearless, razor-tongued comedian striding onto the stage with nothing but a mic and a smirk, ready to take aim at a political heavyweight who's spent decades sidestepping scandals, deflecting blame, and mastering the art of media gymnastics like it's an Olympic event. The air's thick with tension, the crowd's holding its breath, and the first punchline hasn't even landed yet.
Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felonies.
Now, what happens when the ultimate escape artist finally meets someone who refuses to let them slide out of the spotlight? When Desi Lydic turned her razor-sharp wit toward Hillary Clinton, it wasn't just a playful jab, it was a full-blown satirical showdown. Think less friendly tease and more roast with a PhD in irony, sizzling with sarcasm and layered with feminist bite. The audience wasn't just laughing, they were witnessing a political takedown disguised as comedy gold.
Hillary's whole speech was very moving. In fact, she killed it, although it will be ruled. On the other hand, over in the right-wing media world, they had a major complaint.
Hillary Clinton, she's the most joyless person I think was ever walked on.
The setup seemed harmless enough. Just Desi doing what she does best, slicing through power with wit, exposing hypocrisy under a spotlight, and seasoning every line with that signature. Did she really just say that? Energy. But the moment Hillary's name entered the mix, the mood shifted. Playfulness gave way to precision, and Desi's humor turned into a scalpel, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore.
Donald never tells you what he would do. Would he have started a war? Would he have bombed Iran? And we did drive them to the negotiating table. And my successor, John Kerry, and President Obama got a deal that put a lid on Iran's nuclear program.
The audience leaned forward, caught between laughter and disbelief. Twitter was already warming up, popcorn emojis at the ready. And somewhere in Chappaqua, you can almost imagine a phone lighting up in silent outrage. Because when Desi Lydic decides to call someone out, she doesn't just deliver a slap, she drops a perfectly timed comedic bomb, polished with charm and detonated by that unmistakable, mischievous smile.
Big fan of Hillary's, are you?
No, I don't like
Why don't you like Hillary?
I don't like her anyway. Well, because I think she's the most corrupt person that we've ever had in the White House. I mean, there's so many terrible things that she's done.
She doesn't need to shout to be heard, and she definitely doesn't need to hurl insults. Her power lies in the precision. She spotlights the absurdity, buffs it to a blinding shine, and hands it right back with a smile that says, "Here, take a look. This is what you really look like under the unforgiving glare of fluorescent truth lighting." It's elegant, merciless, and utterly unforgettable.
Criticizing Hillary for being joyless? Why don't you go post a Harambe meme on Vine, you 2015 piece of shit?
A reflection on power, ambition, and that razor-thin line between empowerment and entitlement, the one that makes everyone squirm just a little when it's brought up. Picture Desi on stage, dissecting the girl boss narrative Hillary practically trademarked, the one polished enough to be a campaign slogan. You know, the kind that turns smashing the glass ceiling into a full-scale demolition, then somehow sends you the bill for the cleanup. But Desi's brilliance lies in her precision. She doesn't mock women in politics, far from it. She targets the system that markets women as political products, wrapped in empowerment, sold through branding, and paraded as progress. And Hillary, whether by choice or by circumstance, has become the poster child for that paradox, the polished symbol of feminist victory that also reminds us how easily power can rebrand itself as virtue. It was the comedic equivalent of saying, "Congratulations, you've played the feminist game so perfectly that it no longer exists without you." But maybe that's exactly the problem. Cue the nervous laughter, that hesitant, collective chuckle people give when they agree, but don't quite know if they're allowed to. And Desi didn't leave it there. She twisted the truth just enough to make everyone in the room feel it, not cruelly, but surgically. Clean. Efficient. Devastating. Watching her work was like witnessing a stand-up comic with a scalpel instead of a mic, cutting not for pain, but for clarity. Because Desi's takedown wasn't about Hillary the person, it was about Hillary the idea. The myth, the machinery, the illusion of progress that always comes with a price tag.
Come on, guys. Hillary doesn't smile enough. Kamala smiles too much. You know what? You don't get an opinion on this, okay? You get to control one hole on women's bodies, not two, and you picked one already.
It wasn't that Desi exposed Hillary, it's that she exposed us. Our collective obsession with pretending she's still the main character in a political drama that's long since changed acts. Desi's comedy didn't punch down, it diagnosed. It was less of an attack and more of a comedic checkup, an unflinching assessment of a patient called the Democratic brand, stubbornly insisting it's healthy while clearly running a fever. And that's where Desi thrives, turning truth into something that sounds like gossip, something you lean in to hear even though you already know it's true. The crowd wasn't cheering out of spite, they were exhaling. Finally, someone said what's been simmering under the surface, that the political left can't claim to be the party of progress while still clinging to the ghosts of campaigns past. When Desi drew attention to the irony of a movement built on change being fronted by the same faces for 3 decades, the collective oof that rippled through the audience said everything. Her comedic scalpel sliced right through the veneer of public polish and laid bare the contradictions that have haunted Hillary's legacy, how she can embody both empowerment and establishment, revolution and routine. Desi didn't need to call Hillary fake, the genius was in restraint. She simply held up a mirror polished with wit and timing, revealing how authenticity can be the hardest thing to find when your story's been edited by spin for 30 years.
Something about Trump's hold on the Republican Party that is frightening. And it's another reason why any sensible person should reject his bid to become president again. Because if you think about the day after his presidency, where he has said, I want to be a dictator for the day, to change everything in the government. I want to, as you say, execute traitors. Traitors to who? Not to the United States, traitors to him because they wouldn't do his bidding. On and
you laugh because it's funny, and then it hits you. You're not just laughing at the joke, you're laughing at the truth hiding inside it. That's the power of Desi Lydic. Her humor doesn't just land, it detonates. And when she turned her comedic lens toward Hillary Clinton, the internet did what it always does best. It split right down the middle. Half of Twitter anointed Desi as the new queen of political comedy, a fearless voice finally saying what everyone else had been too careful to admit. The other half branded her a traitor, guilty of blasphemy for daring to poke fun at the sacred matriarch of democratic politics. But here's the thing, Desi wasn't tearing Hillary down. She was tearing down the idea that anyone, no matter how historic or powerful, should exist beyond critique. That's what satire was born to do. It's not about cruelty, it's about clarity. It's supposed to slap sense into the system, to make everyone on every side just uncomfortable enough to think. And for a few brilliant minutes, Desi did exactly that. It was comedy with a scalpel, sharp, deliberate, and devastatingly insightful. This wasn't the kind of humor Hillary's generation ever fully embraced. Desi's brand of comedy is self-aware and ruthless, no idols, no untouchables. You can cheer for feminism without turning it into a slogan or a merch drop. You can respect Hillary's groundbreaking career while still admitting that maybe, Just maybe, America doesn't need another Clinton-themed comeback tour. Desi's pacing was masterful, a blend of roast and revelation. TED Talk meets takedown. She flowed seamlessly from jokes about campaign optics to reflections on how political movements mutate into marketing machines. It was the kind of performance that makes you laugh, then suddenly realize you're rethinking everything you thought you knew about power. And then came the line, the one that left the audience in stunned silence. Hillary Clinton, I imagine, is a very bright woman, just without the courage of her convictions, because I'm not even sure what they are. Desi's brilliance was never in the insult, it was in the framing. She wasn't mocking Hillary for losing the presidency. She was mocking the myth, the idea that the nation lost something irreplaceable because of it. Her message was crystal clear. Progress isn't about who gets to sit on the throne. It's about questioning why the throne even exists. And, of course, the reactions were pure chaos. Clinton loyalists fumed in real time, typing out think pieces disguised as tweets. The usual opener, I respect Desi's comedy, but followed by 12 paragraphs of fury about misogyny, media bias, and misplaced loyalty. They couldn't decide if they were offended, impressed, or both. But the real genius? Desi didn't just expose Hillary's contradictions, she exposed everyone's. The audience, the pundits, the political fandoms that now resemble celebrity cults. She turned the mirror outward, forcing people to confront how easily they project ideals onto politicians like blank canvases.
She reminds me of Magic Johnson's talk show. And I won't say anything.
Yeah, you had that thought too, huh?
If you ever watch Magic Johnson's talk, Magic Johnson was a charming individual, but he wasn't a talk show host. And when you watched his show, you could almost see Arsenio's advice to him.
The problem with politics these days is that every critique has to be labeled, either brave or betrayal, depending on who's in the audience. And that's exactly where Desi found her rhythm, in that deliciously awkward gray zone between admiration and exasperation. The space where people clap a little too loudly, trying to convince themselves they're in on the joke, while secretly wondering if they should be laughing at all. Desi leaned into that tension with the precision of a surgeon and the mischief of a rebel. Every punchline dripped with irony, the kind that doesn't just make you laugh, it makes you flinch. Because it wasn't really about Hillary. It was about us. About a system that canonizes politicians like saints, turns scandals into hashtags, and converts voters into fan clubs. Desi pointed out what nobody wants to admit. Hillary's story isn't unique. It's just televised. Somewhere in the marble corridors of Washington, you can almost imagine a frazzled PR intern typing out a 3-page memo titled, How to Respond to Being Roasted by Desi Lydic Without Sounding Bitter. Spoiler alert, there is no good response. Her genius was in balance, treating Hillary not as a villain, but as a symbol of ambition that forgot to evolve. A movement that stopped updating its software sometime around 2016. Desi even quipped that every time the Democratic Party tries to reinvent itself, Hillary pops up again, like a political pop-up ad no one asked for. The crowd erupted, half in laughter, half in recognition. Because deep down, they knew no matter how many times the party tries to reboot, Hillary's shadow still flickers across the screen like a relic from the Obama era.
There was one that, I don't know why this was swept under the rug, but you know, she went into the IRS and looked at political enemies' tax returns.
Nixon did that.
Yeah, well, absolutely Nixon did that. Yeah,
But here's the real kicker. Desi didn't leave the punchlines neatly stacked at Hillary's doorstep. She turned the spotlight back on the audience. On the way people defend politicians like their blood relatives, ready to go to war at the first hint of criticism. On how ideology has become the new spectator sport, fans decked out in colors of loyalty, cheering for teams that haven't scored in decades, but still chant, next time, we'll win. Desi drew a perfect parallel. Our obsession with political nostalgia is like watching reruns of a show that ended badly, hoping each time that somehow, this time, the finale will be different. It was equal parts hilarious and heartbreaking. The crowd laughed, not just at the joke, but at the recognition of themselves within it. And when the clip hit the internet, the reaction was volcanic. Because denial always screams louder than reflection. As for Hillary, she stayed silent, which might have been her smartest move yet. You can't argue with comedy. It's the one mirror that never lies. Desi's takedown hit because it wasn't cruel, it was human. A reminder that even icons need accountability, and that truth, when wrapped in laughter, is impossible to spin.
At some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen. The base of the Republican Party, for whatever combination of reasons, and it is emotional and psychological, sees in him someone who speaks for them. Maybe they don't like me.
The fallout didn't just last a few hours, it lasted for days. The internet turned Desi's comedy set into the Zapruder film of political humor. Every frame was dissected, every line analyzed. Think pieces flooded the timelines, each one asking the same questions in slightly different fonts. Was Desi Lydic too harsh on Hillary? Can feminists critique feminist icons? Why is everyone laughing, but no one entirely comfortable? Cable news shows played the clip on loop, panels debated whether satire had gone too far, and Twitter became a live-action sociology experiment. Meanwhile, Desi did what she always does, turn discomfort into laughter, turning tension into truth. The irony of it all? By calling out Hillary, Desi ended up proving one of Hillary's oldest talking points, that women can be just as ruthless as men in politics. The difference? Desi did it with sharper timing, better punchlines, and a far higher approval rating. Her words landed like precision strikes, humor wrapped around honesty, delivered with the precision of a stand-up surgeon. That's what makes Desi so dangerous. She's both funny and right. And that combination terrifies politicians more than a surprise email audit. As the discourse spiraled, Hillary stayed silent, resilient, composed, almost predictable. It's her signature move, outlast the outrage. If history is any guide, she'll survive this the way she survives everything, with strategic restraint, a carefully worded interview, and maybe a podcast episode about the evolving role of humor in politics. But here's the twist, Desi's moment didn't fade like a headline. It lingered, replayed, embedded itself in the cultural memory. Because for a few minutes on that stage, laughter wasn't just entertainment, it was accountability, served with style and perfect comedic timing.
Because the Democrats decided to nominate somebody who in 2008, the Democratic voters already told you they didn't like, they didn't trust. Women didn't trust her. Not just men, women didn't trust her. So at the end of the day, you guys, the Democrats put up a candidate that people didn't trust.
Why do people have this suspicion about her? Truth is, Hillary...
Because when comedy collides with truth that hard, it stops being entertainment, it becomes a cultural landmark. Years from now, when people trace the strange crossroads between politics and performance, this will be one of those moments they revisit, when a comedian made the world laugh, cringe, and rethink everything, all in the same breath. Desi Lydic didn't destroy Hillary Clinton. She did something far more subversive. She reminded everyone that even political legends bleed humanity. That comedy doesn't choose sides, it chooses truths. And sometimes, the truth hurts more precisely because it's wrapped in laughter. That's the genius of it. She didn't rant, she didn't moralize, she didn't play to outrage. She simply let humor do what it's always done best, reveal what power tries to hide. And then came the aftermath, pure, unfiltered chaos dressed in irony. The media couldn't decide whether Desi was a feminist icon or a reckless provocateur who'd just poked the political beehive. Cable networks turned it into a primetime soap opera, comedian versus icon, democracy in jeopardy. Hillary supporters flooded the internet with think pieces about context, while conservatives, in a twist no one saw coming, hailed her as their newest truth teller. Meanwhile, Desi was probably somewhere, coffee in hand, scrolling through the frenzy thinking, all this over one joke? Late-night pundits dissected her timing like philosophers debating ethics, and Twitter became a battlefield of memes, essays, and outrage masquerading as analysis. But beneath the digital noise, something rare was happening. People were finally talking. Honestly. Uncomfortably. Hilariously. That's the beautiful chaos of Desi Lydic.